Redline Logbook here for Noah's Ark Part 4. We start off where we left off with Rode disappearing into dust, saying Alan's name. Funny thing is, the way she said it was very, sweet and genuine. And so Robbie then asked Alan, "What exactly did you do to that girl? How much does she love you?" And Alan's response is, "Don't make weird things up. I didn't do anything to her." This, of course, leads to a fight between Robbie and Alan. It's not a serious fight, but Lena Lee then points out something to them which immediately gets them to stop. If Rode disappeared, and the door to the exit was made by her powers, doesn't that mean the door disappeared? After freaking out for a second, Robbie then grabs onto his hammer, causes it to extend, and goes straight up to the top where Rhode's door should be. This gives Alan and Lena Lee time to talk, and she immediately realizes what Alan's thinking, which is that even if Rhode's door is still there, Crowley and Conda aren't coming with them. And Alan's like, "Yep, bullseye." She hits him for being so nonchalant about it because it's fine. The plan is that when you guys go through the door, I'm going to go back and look for those two to get them. Plus, I'm worried about my master, so I need to go get him as well. Lena Lee volunteers to go with him to find the others, but obviously her legs aren't working, so Alan's like, no, I gotta do this by myself. Obviously, Lena Lee is somewhat heartbroken about this, but she understands, and she's actually kind of jealous the fact that Alan is able to always smile, even in a situation like this. And she says if she was in his situation, she'd probably do the exact same thing as him. Robbie finally gets to the top, and he sees that the door is still there, so they got nothing to worry about. He goes get the rest, gets them to the top, and right before they enter the door, Alan then remembers Tiki Meek is still down there. He clicks his tongue in frustration, but he realizes Tiki Meek is still just a human being, and he's gonna go save him. Of course, Robbie tries to stop him, saying, "Wait, this guy is the enemy, who's a Noah." But Alan's like, no, the Noah inside him's dead. And besides that, he is still a person. He had human friends when we first met him, remember? There are people out there who care about him, who want to see him again. And of course, this leads Robbie to basically back off. Choju, on the other hand, does not back off at all. In fact, he gets extremely pissed. He assumed Tiki Meek was dead. He assumed Alan killed him. When Alan tries to explain that Tiki Meek is a human being and he's not going to just kill a human being, Choju then gets extremely pissed off because obviously his master Anatia and all of his friends are dead because of him and the Akuma. Tiki Meek is nothing more than an enemy in a war who should be dead in Choju's mind, not another person. And Choju says that if Alan goes and saves him, he's nothing more than an enemy at that point. He's nothing more than an Akuma himself. And just at the moment, the ground between Choju and Alan starts to split. Alan pushes Choju out of the way, and these weird tentacle things come up, grab Alan, and drag him into the pit to the bottom floor. Lena Lee and Robbie freak out because what they just witnessed is most likely Tiki Meek getting back on his feet and attacking them. And Choju's only response is Alan got what he deserved for not killing Tiki Meek when he had a chance. Alan now on the bottom floor, back with Tiki Meek, and Alan can feel the Noah power just radiating off of him, even though it should have been destroyed. Alan then asks him, "Are you really Tiki Meek? Who are you? What are you?" And the tentacles that were coming off of Tiki Meek then start to form into that weird smiling face, the same that was above Borak, but his was made of lightning. These are made of tentacles. Either way, the soul of the Noah has basically manifested at this moment out of Tiki Meek. As for the real Tiki Meek, he's kind of like dead-eyed. And Alan doesn't understand what's going on. He could have sworn he destroyed the Noah inside of Tiki Meek, and so now he's just afraid there's something wrong with what's happening. He manifests his sword like he did before, and that's when he realizes that Tiki Meek's wounds are bleeding black blood. Tiki Meek then starts screaming as if he's in massive pain. The tentacles then go wild, turning into this smoke wrapping around Tiki Meek, and when it's all over, he seems to have gone through a transformation. At that point, Alan then attacks Tiki Meek, trying to cut him with his sword again to finish off the Noah. But Tiki Meek is fast. He moves so fast, Alan can't even see him. And when he gets hit by him, it causes a shockwave that shakes the entire area. Alan is just being overwhelmed by the power of this transformed Tiki Meek. Robbie jumps in, grabs Alan, pulls him at a distance. He's planning on just grabbing Alan and going straight to the door with everyone else, but then he realizes, or at least Alan points out, when Tiki Meek attacked Alan, he also shattered Rogue's door, trapping them inside. Tiki Meek then starts laughing maniacally. He's completely lost his mind. He's basically a feral beast at this point. After it's done laughing maniacally, then charges straight at Robbie and Alan and starts going at them, destroying everything with its punches. Robbie is afraid, as he should be, because this insane, evil aura of the Noah starts to just cover the entire area coming off of Tiki Meek. Robbie realizes he ain't winning this fight, and so all he can do is just run away. He goes back up top with Alan. He sees Lena Lee and Choju. He tells them to get on and they're going to run. Where to? He has no idea because there's nowhere else to run, but he's still going to run. But it's too late. This new Tiki Meek is just fast. He catches up in an instant and immediately attacks them. Robbie does everything in his power to hold off Tiki Meek, but it is just overwhelming them. He rips apart Robbie with his bare hands, and then when Alan attacks, he blocks Alan's sword, which shouldn't be able to be blocked by a Noah, and does one of those devastating punches again against Alan. Robbie and Alan are just throwing everything they have at him, but nothing's working, and he's just beating them down. Lena Lee realizes at that moment they're gonna die. She realizes that this is not a moment where they can push past their limits and win. He's at such an insane level that there's no hope. They are going to die if they don't do something. Both Alan and Robbie are defeated, thrown into the ground, and then Tiki Meek starts to just strangle Lena Lee with his tentacles. Choju then starts to get angry and frustrated as a thought comes to him, which is, we can't die here without saving a single thing. And we get a flashback to what he's talking about. So back at the pirate ship, right after the battle with the Akuma, obviously everyone was dead. They were just being held together by Miranda's time. But obviously 3 people survived, including Choji. Thing is, at the time, he was refusing to admit that he survived, even though everyone knew he was alive, and he kept saying that he was dead like everyone else, and this continued to be a stupid argument until Anatia came along and asked him if he really was alive or not. Not able to lie to Anatia, he then asked if he could stay on the ship with them and just, die with them. Anatia's like, no, that's not happening. And Choju refuses to give up. He says, I want to die with you, because shortly after he left his mother's womb, she was killed by an Akuma. As a result of this, he was basically raised by Anatia's mother in this little pirate group of theirs. And so the people who were the most important to him were her mother and her, Anatia. And so the person that he cares for the most and respects the most is about to die, then he would like to go with her. But Anatia's like, I understand your feelings, and I get where you're coming from. Those who get left behind have it the worst. But the fact that my mother and I were able to save your life and build this connection, even though we are going to be passing on, our lives will continue on with you and with the Exorcists. And as more people are saved by you and the Exorcists, you will be able to pass on your lives to them. And so she asked him to please live on, survive, and then use his life to save the Exorcists. And so back to the present, we really understand where Choji's coming from. He wasn't able to help any of the Exorcists up to this point, and he feels like he's breaking Anatia's promise that he made to her. He's basically lying there begging for anyone to come and help, anything, save Lena Lee. But at that moment, he realizes no one's coming, and he finally gets the courage to charge at Tiki Meek. Obviously, he's going to have no effect, but he's at least trying something. And as he gets to Tiki Meek, the ground then begins to shatter because the tower's falling, it's collapsing. Lena Lee kicks Tiki Meek in the neck. This has no effect. Once again, her innocence isn't working. And Tiki Meek just chucks her away. Choju then jumps after her, trying to catch her so she doesn't fall to her death. And all we see is them disappear into a pile of rubble as more just crashes down on top of them, which should have crushed them to death. In fact, Tiki Meek starts laughing about it. That is, until he sees something. He sees Choju lift up all of the rubble. And when I say all of the rubble, I mean this is enough rubble to build a 4 or 5 story house made of pure concrete. Lena Lee then senses innocence coming from Choju, and she realizes that he's resonating with a piece of innocence. She just doesn't know where it's coming from. It's obviously and revealed to us that it came from the General Theodore. It's the innocence that he threw into the sky before. Then we pop over to this random place that we've never seen before, filled with the skeletal men who are all dead. And one of the skeleton men is dragging the last living one to, looks like an altar. This skeleton man that's half dead and beaten being dragged says, "You are not a skull of the master's making," which heavily implies is all these skull people are probably golems created by the Earl and referred to as skulls. The fake skull says, "So this is the egg," which is the altar thing, and chucks the half-dead skull person at it. It hits it, but nothing happens. It doesn't damage it at all. Instead, the skull sets ablaze, and he starts to die, and he mocks the fake skull by saying, "This is a barrier created by our master." He claims that the barrier cannot be destroyed by innocence, it can only be destroyed by sorcery that existed from ancient times. And since this fake skull doesn't know how to do that, the barrier will never be destroyed. The egg will survive. And it starts to boast that the egg will soon be downloaded onto the new Ark, and before it can continue to run its mouth, the fake skull just stomps on its head, killing it completely. Back with Lena Lee and Choju, Lena Lee is completely still bound in those tentacle things, because even though they're no longer attached to Tiki Meek, they still have her wrapped up. As for Choju, he is currently holding up that massive pile of debris. Choju asks what's happening to him, and Lena Lee explains that he's resonating with innocence, but his body seems to be bulging and ripping itself apart because it's an equipment type, but it's not currently in an equipment, and so it's overtaxing his body, and it's going to kill him if he doesn't stop. But if he, drops the giant thing, they'll both be crushed to death. Tiki Meek apparently realizes what's happening, hovers down to their level, and attacks. And Lena Lee thinks about her brother, which is what happened last time when she thinks she's about to die. She's always thinking about her brother, the most important person in her life. Fortunately for Lena Lee and Choju, both Robbie and Alan are back on their feet and they're fighting Tiki Meek again. Well, more of a beating by Tiki Meek because they still have no chance of beating him. Alan's able to get Tiki Meek's attention by wrapping it up in Clown Crown. He charges at Alan, and the two are about to have a huge clash when a pattern appears on the floor. It's the decapitated head of a female angel that's been crucified, surrounded by a circle of crosses. This pattern glows, the ground erupts, and underneath Alan appears the fake skull with a coffin, and riding on the skull's head is Littleton Campy. The fake skull is holding Alan by his leg upside down, and he basically starts to insult Alan over and over again, saying that he's disappointed that he thought he changed, but no, he's exactly as he was when he first found him, his idiot apprentice. Alan recognizes the voice, and not just that, he recognizes the coffin as the coffin of Maria, and he realizes that this skull person is actually his master. Alan's face goes completely pale as the skull face disappears, revealing General Cross. The best part about this is that after he's done revealing his face to Alan, Cross just drops his apprentice on his head. Cross looks at Alan and he notices that his arm has transformed into a sword, and he's like, "So, you are finally able to evolve your innocence." And so it looks like he's about to compliment Alan, but then he says, "But you're still beaten up," grabs him by the collar and says, "You filthy apprentice," and chucks his ass over to Lena Lee. He then tells Robbie to go away because he's also filthy. He only allows beautiful people, except women. They can be filthy or not and be in his presence. So yeah, as you can imagine, Robbie's a little offended, but he does as Cross says because he's the general. Cross then challenges Tiki Meek, or what's left of Tiki Meek's. Tiki Meek makes his first move, those tentacles of his, but Cross opens up the coffin and comes out a woman who immediately starts singing. As the singing goes on, a bubble basically goes around Alan and his group, who are all together, and they basically turn like invisible. To explain what's going on, the woman is actually a corpse that General Cross is able to manipulate and control with magic, and this corpse has its own innocence, which allows it to create illusions when it sings, so that's why everyone looks like they're invisible. But once again, the innocence that allows for illusions is the corpse's innocence. It's not Cross's. Cross has his own innocence, which means he technically has two. And Cross's innocence is a fucking gun. And he just blows a massive fucking hole into Tiki Meek. And Cross has no interest in letting Tiki Meek even have a chance, because as soon as he shoots him once, he then shoots him like 100 more times. He just keeps firing round after round after round into Tiki Meek. His entire body just getting ripped to shreds by bullets. All you see is casings just fall on the ground everywhere. It is a handgun, but it's basically acting like a machine gun at this point. Eventually, Tiki Meek is able to basically get on his feet properly, and he smacks a bunch of Cross's bullets away. Unfortunately for him, Cross's bullets are apparently homing bullets that do not stop until they hit their target, so even if he launches them away, they go through rubble, just rip through the rubble, fly out the other end, and go back at Tiki Meek. The fighting is so brutal and horrific on Tiki Meek's half that Lena Lee even goes, "It's one-sided." Robbie also comments that when you look at it, they have a long way to go. They're nowhere near Cross's level. The last of the ground begins to fall apart because it's all being downloaded into the new arc. Robbie and Choju actually collapse and fall into the abyss. Robbie grabs Choju and then launches his hammer upwards so Alan can grab onto it and pull them both up. But as Alan grabs onto Robbie's hammer, it shatters because it's been overused, and the two just fall into the abyss. And so Cross decides he's just going to finish off the fight. He's going to kill Tiki Meek, get it over with. But that is when the Earl appears carrying Tiki Meek, basically there to save him. Once again, the ground is still collapsing, so Lena Lee falls. She can't really save herself because of her legs. Alan is able to grab her with Clown Crown, and the two are basically just desperately just trying to stay on whatever platforms remain. Cross and the Earl then just start discussing the past, and they're actually just slighting each other. Cross calls the Earl Fatso, and the Earl says, "Well, we'd see each other more often if it was the fact that you're playing hide and seek with that woman of yours. She doesn't just hide you from us, she also hides you from your debt collectors. Cross then shoots the Earl and tells him to leave. The Earl says, you're the one trespassing on my ark, and Cross's response is, you've already abandoned this ark for a new one, and besides, you haven't been able to use this in years, not since the 14th betrayed you and put a curse on it. And of course, this pisses the Earl off because that just confirmed that Cross is the one that was working with the 14th all along, which he already had suspicions about, but once again, this confirms it. Once they got their footing, both Alan and Lena Lee are able to hear the conversation that's going on, and of course, Alan is getting more and more pissed off, because the Earl mentions that the 14th made Cross the musician is completely pointless now, because the control panel of the Ark has already been transferred, and so there's no way to stop the transfer of the old Ark into the new, and so all the exorcists that have already fallen are now gone forever and dead. Their blood will be used to baptize the Noah's new Ark. Alan then rockets straight at the Earl, attacks him, and their swords collide. And just as the other Noah realizes it, the Earl obviously realizes that Alan is basically using a copy of the Earl's sword. The Earl just continues to mock Alan as he's being attacked by him, because it's no big deal. At a certain point, Maria starts to sing, which then takes over the control of Alan's body, and he actually is forced to retreat from the Earl. Alan, obviously knowing what's happening to him, starts to yell at his master to let him fight and to stop this, release his body. But Cross's response is very simple, don't try to fight the Earl with hatred. That's when Lero, he's still around, rockets all the way over to the Earl. And the Earl then thanks him for leading the exorcist to their trap. And also, he's also grateful that this whole situation led to Tiki Meek finally awakening. He comments that Tiki Meek has always suppressed his Noah, and he can't wait what will come of the Noah of pleasure. Then all three of them fly through Rhodes' door and disappear. Back with Alan's group, he's obviously depressed by the simple fact that he wasn't able to kill the Earl, on top of the fact that his friends are technically dead. But Cross is like, hey, I didn't save you just so you can mope around. I got a mission. It's time you help. We jump over to the Earl real quick, where he's currently playing on a piano. We'll know what that is in a minute. But we actually finally get an update on what's going on outside. Obviously, the remaining exorcists, led by General Theodore, are currently fighting all of the Akumas. Anyway, the reason why we're getting an update from them isn't because they're fighting Akuma, no. It's because out of the sky appears a black ark. This is the Noah Ark 2. Of course, they all freak out the sight of a second ark, but more importantly, the white ark, the first one, starts to just fall apart and disappear, and that's vastly more concerning because all of their friends are on that ark. In fact, Bookman is extra worried because his replacement, Robbie, Bookman Jr., is also disappearing at this moment. That's a big deal because Bookman is too old to find a new Bookman Jr. He needs Robbie to survive to become the new Bookman. Back with Alan's group, they ask him, what do you mean, what mission? You mean the one to destroy the Akuma factory? Isn't that a little too late? But Cross just ignores them and orders Tinkapi to take them to the other room, where they basically just teleport. I don't know, Tinkapi can do that, to the room with that egg with all of the dead skeletons. Yeah, so that egg is actually the plant that produces Akuma, and it basically can't be destroyed because there's a barrier around it, and so what Alan needs to do is stop it from being teleported away to the new ark. They have to be able to keep it here on the old ark. Alan's response is pretty obvious, which is, well, if you know how to stop it, then do it already. Why are you wasting time? It's already being downloaded. And Cross's response is, I'm not going to do it. You are, Alan. Cross does some sorcery to basically slow down the download of the egg, and he orders Alan to go. So Tinkapi opens up a gate, and they are forced through into the final room of the ark, the hidden room. It's a simple room with a couple chairs, a couch, and a piano. Oh, and one wall is one giant mirror, and when Alan looks at the mirror, he sees this shadowy figure that's supposed to be his reflection, and it can talk. It tells Alan that this is the room created by the 14th. Alan, when looking at it, realizes that this is the same creature that was in his nightmare, the one that he's looking at him through the water reflection. The shadow reflection points to the piano and says, my key. When Alan looks at the real one, he notices Tinkapi sitting on it, and the shadow says, my Tinkapi. You, Alan, and Tinkapi are the musician. Alan looks at the shadow and says, what are you talking about? Tinkapi was created by Master. Also, he wants to know what the hell the musician is, because Cross hasn't explained anything. Fortunately, Cross then starts communicating with Alan inside of an earpiece, which means Cross had an earpiece the entire time. He just actively was avoiding talking to anyone, which is just fantastic. Lena Lee is currently being held up by Cross because they're literally just standing on crumbling floor. This is important because Lena Lee is also talking through the communication device in Cross's ear, and so Alan realizes she's way too close to be able to do that, and he's demanding that Cross let her go and not touch her. So even as everything's about to go to shit, Alan still does not trust his master with women. So Cross asks Alan if there's a piano in the room with him, and he says, well, yeah. Cross says, good, now play it. And Alan's face just drops because he has never played the piano in his entire life. He has no idea what he's supposed to do, but Cross just keeps yelling at him to do it or he'll go into debt again. The two just start arguing over this. Obviously, there's no time, so the shadow basically says Alan must play the piano. The musical score belongs to Alan, and then Tin Campy opens its mouth, and this weird musical score appears in like a hologram. Cross is just yelling at Alan, play the score already. The last of the egg is disappearing. We see what's going on on the outside as the last of the White Ark, the original one, is just fading away and disappearing. Miranda's trying to use her time rewind to stop it, but it's not working. It's just the end of everything. And as the Ark finally disappears into nothingness, we go to the Earl, who is laughing maniacally. Rode then comes into the room and asks if the Earl is happy. Then a second female Noah shows up and asks if the Master really is happy. And he knows, like, what do you mean? Well, you don't look happy, and when you get an expression of the Earl, he's just crying. It's not entirely explained why he's crying, but it's implied it has something to do with the 14th. Anyways, it's time to go, and the Ark basically turns into a shooting star and just rockets across the Earth. And the next thing we see is Alan playing the piano. Alan recognizes the crest in the middle of the melody, and as he reads the melody, he instantly knows how to play it. He instantly knows everything about it, and he's just playing the song bit by bit. And as Alan plays the melody, he hears someone singing in his head. Cross then screams into his ears that he must now take over the Ark. He must put his hopes into this song. What does he want? And Alan starts to think about everything that he wants, all the people he cares about. And Alan screams with all of his might, bring them back, don't disappear. And as Alan plays the piano, the Ark starts to return, piece by piece. First the room that they had the fight with Tiki Meek and Rode in, and so Robbie and Choju also return. Then the library returns, Crowley's there, and finally that western-style desert appears with Conda. The final thing we see is the room with the egg, and the egg finally returns, so it didn't get downloaded into the Ark. And so Cross then congratulates Alan, saying that both master and student have won this day. Alan ignores him, but Cross understands why he's ignoring him, and so he just asked Alan to open up a door for them. Alan hits a key, and just a new door just appears that allows Lena Lee and Cross to enter. First, Alan tells Lena Lee that he's glad that she's safe, and then he glares at Cross. Cross says, don't look at me like that, but Alan is about to bring up the score when he just hears Robbie screaming dinner time over and over again. Both Alan and Lena Lee are freaking out because they thought their friends were dead, so they're so happy right now. They try calling out to Robbie, but Robbie can't hear them. It's a one-way thing. That's when Conda, carrying Crowley's body, walks into the room with Robbie and Choji, showing to Lena Lee and Alan that they're both alive. Lena Lee finally just collapses from all of the exhaustion from everything and just starts to cry tears of joy for the first time in so long. So a little time jump happens where everyone is let into the room with the piano, so now they're all together again. Alan is able to finally interact with Tin Campy, which he hasn't seen since China, since, when he had a hole put in his heart. They embrace each other, and Tin Campy starts crying like crazy. Also, Alan points out that Tin Campy got big again, because Tin Campy can change his size. So they're all wandering through the Ark like normal. Now they have control over it. Alan notices that Conda has that tattoo on his chest, and he tries bringing it up, but Conda just ignores him. This leads to another fight between the two of them, because of course it does. Alan then walks through a door, takes a step, realizes there's nothing there, falls into an abyss where we have this chain of him, Conda, Robbie, and Choju all holding on to each other, trying to avoid falling into the abyss. Choju, of course, is the one at the top holding it, and then Alan looks at him and remembers the last conversation they had was Choju basically calling him a traitor. Choju also remembers this conversation. He's not ready to forgive Alan for, not actually doing his job and killing the enemy, but he doesn't want Alan to die, at least. Finally, after all this time, that innocence that was released by General Theodore finally makes to Choju, locks into his arm in this weird ring thing, like a bracelet. This gives Choju super strength where he just pulls all of them out of the abyss. So now, Choju is an exorcist. Well, first he has to have his innocence refined by the Order, which means having to get Kamui involved. That's when both Robbie and Conda realize Oh yeah, both of our ninjas have fallen apart. That means we gotta get that crazy bastard to fix it. And both of them do not like that. That's when Alan mentions Crowley, saying, I'm really worried about him. He hasn't woken up yet. But like, he'll be fine. General Cross and Lena Lee are with him. And that's when all the men realize they left Lena Lee with General Cross. So we go to those two, where Lena Lee is worried about Crowley, and General Cross compliments on the fact that Lena Lee is able to express her emotions better than she used to. Also, she's better looking than she was before, and he compliments her hair, saying that he wishes that it was still long. She then tells him that Anatia said the exact same thing, that I should grow it out, because it was beautiful. This, of course, makes Cross kind of sad, because he told her not to follow him, and he knows the fact that she ignored that and went after him is the reason why she's gone. Now, this is all happening while Cross has his hand on Lena Lee's face, because he's touching her hair, and that's when the guys come in, all exhausted from running all the way here, and they basically say, Master, that is a criminal. Get away from her. And Cross's only response is, she's 16 now. She's a fine woman. We then go to the second arc, which is currently stuck in the middle of nowhere. The Earl is now freaking out because, one, he lost the arc. He can't just teleport anymore now. And two, he also lost the plant to create new Akuma. Basically, everything he feared has come true. The 14th has destroyed his plans. Alan then plays the piano and opens up the gateway to Edo. And basically everyone starts to freak out in their own way to celebrate the fact that everyone's alive. Miranda starts crying that their time has returned. General Theodore also starts to cry. And Bookman gets really pissed and hits Robbie. Then, once everyone is collected into the Ark, they open up a new gate, all the way back to the Eastern Branch. Everyone starts to enter into the Eastern Branch. Obviously, the injured are immediately given treatment. Cross, of course, tries to run away, because that's what Cross always does, but Lena Lee grabs onto him and says, please don't go. Now, this is taken as basically a young woman in love, especially by Bach, who basically has one of his spasms. But the truth is, Lena Lee's thinking to herself, I don't want to have to go looking for this man again. Just stay here, please. Fortunately, Cross's one weakness is a pretty girl, and so he does, in fact, stay and actually listen to orders for the first time. And so they finally make one last trip. They open the gate to headquarters, where Kamui is there to greet them. And that is the end of the Noah's Ark arc. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, give a thumb up so you enjoy more D. Gray Man and other many things. Thank you, and have a great day.